Hey, and welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper podcast. I'm Serena Shoup, CPA, a mom of three, and I've been running a virtual bookkeeping business from my home since 2017. You are in the right place if you are a bookkeeper, accountant, or an accounting student, and you believe and know in your heart that your purpose is bigger than sitting in a cubicle. If you're ready to learn some actionable tips and strategies for starting and growing your accounting business, then I hope you stick around. Welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper podcast. Today I have a guest, Corree Roofener, on the podcast with me, and we are going to dive into money stories, and I'm super excited for this. So hi, Corree. How are you today? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Serena. I am great. Thank you for having me. As you said, I'm Corree Roofener. I'm a mom of six, nana of four, married to my high school sweetheart. And really, my money stories started early, right? And so that's kind of who I am and how I have evolved out or through those, and how I have stepped into courage throughout life. And that has progressed or trajected me to this point in life, and how courage really needs to be kind of a step in all of our lives, no matter what we're talking about. And how we were just truly designed to be a courageous human and evolve and not get stuck in the comfort.
Yeah, that's easier said than done.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So how did you end up as a financial coach? I
Uh-huh.
love to hear people's backstory on how they end up in finance or any career path, honestly, but it's always interesting.
So I was raised as in a home of a single mom,
Mhm.
five kids, and money was always not there, right? It was just not there. And early on, I learned, right, wrong, or indifferent, that if you got in over your head, you filed bankruptcy. That's what my mom did. That's how she made it through. And my husband and I were high school sweethearts. Like I said, we got married super young. We were both 19. And 3 years later, we had a catastrophe. My husband fell off of a roof and couldn't work. And so, guess what happened? I went back to that story. I filed bankruptcy because how else do I make it? How else do I know? And what happened is I felt shame, and I didn't realize that would come with it.
Mhm.
And I felt like I don't want this to ever happen again. So, what can I do? I had taken a personal finance class in high school. They were still giving them at that point, but I really just didn't understand. My stepmom was an amazing couponer, but that felt so overwhelming, right? And so I just started reading and how can I control this? We were on a very, very limited budget. And over the course of the next 2 decades, and I'm jumping a lot, but over the next 2 decades, we created financial independence. We did that by baby steps, saving $10. And everyone's like, what's the point? What's not the point?
Yeah.
That's $120 a year. That could have been that emergency, right? My goal was to build that emergency fund so that I would never be in that place of not being able to pay the bills if something happened. I knew from a young age that something could happen. And so we built this independence. I started doing bookkeeping as a side gig. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I have always loved traveling. So I took on one attorney as a side gig. That money went into our vacation fund every single month. My next step into independence was creating these individual savings accounts so I knew where money was and what it was for. That created value to me, right?
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I coach on is if we don't have value, if we just have these generic accounts, what is the meaning? It's really easy to take from them, right? It's really, really easy to say, oh, I'm short $200 this month. I'm going to go take from that. But what if it says Disneyland for the whole family 2025? All of a sudden it has this meaning to it, and you don't want to take from it because you want to go on that trip with those memories with your kids, right? And your
Yeah.
family. So it was just really little baby steps. It wasn't some miraculous thing, but it was just creating clarity and then creating a plan. And that's the key. What was my clarity? It was to never be stuck in a position of not knowing how we were going to pay the bills or having to file bankruptcy again. And then the dream, the plan is that budget. Where do I want my money to go? So telling your money where to go versus saying, oh, I wonder what happened this month. Right?
Mhm.
So that's really what it came from. It came from the depths of not having enough growing up and then having to do that shameful, what I considered shameful. I don't want anyone to feel that way. I did what had to be done at the time, but it created shame and I didn't want to feel that way again.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. It's always really interesting to hear people's money stories for sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, and then sometimes it like illuminates things that you never even considered from your own childhood. Like, oh, I didn't realize that that happened to me too, or whatever. And like that could be part of my thing too. And you maybe never have recognized that before. So hopefully that resonates with
Absolutely.
someone.
We forget that our amygdala, the part of our brain that creates memories or creates values, is actually started forming at the age of 6 and 7. And that's really young. We think about that, right? And that kind of gives us our beliefs and some of our values around specific things. And money is, it's such a critical thing in our lives. It can be a crutch, it can be kryptonite, it can be so many things, or it can be very valuable and very freeing. And our beliefs about it really are the trajectory of what it is in your life. And so you really have to start unwrapping what it means to you and why it means that to you. Because for the longest time, I felt like money wasn't for me. If I wanted money, that was greedy. You have enough. Like once we had enough and we had a home and we could pay our bills, well, you have enough. Why do you want more? That seems so selfish, right? But why do we feel that way? Like we were born to be in abundance. And if I have more money, I think about what I could do to help and empower other communities, other causes, other values in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I love that you did bookkeeping on the side to fund your vacation fund, and I also love that you basically are like it's very a simple action that anyone can do like today is just rename your bank accounts.
Right. Right. Or
Yeah.
create the savings account, right? Like don't have one, have separate ones that really fall into, one of the things I love to say is, we earn from our strengths and we spend from our values. But most
Mm,
people don't even understand their values,
yeah.
right? So like if you're not spending from your values, you're not going to kind of come into that level of joy with your money, right? Because we have to love how we get to live life in order to keep earning money, right? Otherwise, it's like, what am I doing this for? I hate my job. I hate never having any money to do anything. You have to get that clarity again. And that values is such a critical step in that because, like I said, not only do those values change, but we don't typically know them. Most people are like, what do you mean your values? And those are those things that are just like right at your core. For me, it's, family is critical. So if I'm spending money on family, I am happy. My faith, if I'm spending money in my faith, so service and that kind of stuff, I am so happy. Adventure, oh my gosh, travel feeds my soul. So, like, if I'm spending money there or if I'm saving money there, right, it is so joyful. So,
Yeah.
we have to really think about that because we have to feed our soul.
Yeah. So how do you normally walk people through how to identify their values in that
There's
realm?
so many opportunities to do that. And I think for everybody, it's a little bit different. There's a, thinktoperform.com/values is a really easy flip chart. You can just kind of flip through it and it just keeps flipping you through these different words. Does this mean something to you? Does this not mean something to you? And you click yes or no. And at the end, it gives you the top 5. And it's easy. You can screenshot it, right? You can always have it. That's the easiest. But there's people like they want to feel it and touch it. So, there's online paper tests you can print out and just really kind of be able to go through and really look at the lists.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I think people overthink it when they have it in front of them like that. When it's a flip, it's more instinctual, and instinctual is exactly what you want.
Yeah.
So that is always my number one recommendation for clients, or if I'm speaking on other coaching groups, that's what I recommend them to do.
Okay. Yeah. And have you found, just because I'm thinking like as a business owner, I've done the values exercise to get basically the core values of my business and to be able to hire the right people. Do you find a lot of those personal financial values, or maybe those aren't necessarily specifically financial values, it's just like your core values? Do you
Right.
see that overlapping with business owners, like their company
Absolutely.
values? Okay.
Absolutely. And I think I mean, we're all different bookkeepers. For me, I love like early on female entrepreneurs. And the reason I love it is because there's so much coaching involved, right? Like being
Mhm.
able to get rid of some of those beliefs about how they think about money. But one of the things that I find over and over again is the way you feel in your personal money is the way your business is going to be run too, right? Because we're human. We don't just change. We don't just turn a key and change as we walk into the office or walk into the computer screen, whatever it is. Those values are a part of who we are. So they're going to go back and forth between business and personal. So if you don't like the way your personal finances are run, you probably don't like the way the business finances are run, unless you have a huge team, right? A team of people, that bookkeepers and financial advisors
Yep.
telling you what you need to do. But yeah, I think they do. And I mean, I think if we think about it, like for me, family, my business finances, like when I'm talking about how my business is being run, there's multiple ways family comes into that. Not only my family, but my clients' families. And if I want to hire somebody, their philosophy with family, right?
Yeah.
Because that's just who I am. I just have this passion to feed and the people that want to stay at home, right? I told you that my side gig was a bookkeeping position, and that fueled us, that gave us freedom. And I would love to continue to do that for other moms, dads who are staying at home, to be able to have that side gig or that full-time income, depending on what they're looking for. So
Yeah.
that is that rollover between values.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge one for me too. That's how I started out. I mean, it was a side hustle to motherhood, but yeah,
Yes. Right. Right. And then
it
and
still
then
kind of is.
yeah, and we evolve, right? We evolve and we're like, oh, there's actually something bigger there in our hearts that we want more of, or we want to change this up, or we want it to look different. For me, growing the business actually came from leaving everything we knew. My husband and I were born and raised in Oregon. And we spent up to 46 years there raising our kids. And life happened. And we decided that, you know what? This isn't the life that we want to live. And we sold everything, gave up my husband's career, and moved to a piece of property in Montana that we owned as a possible retirement property, and built our home and built our business. And I think about that, like, right? Like we think about that, like that side gig that most of us don't give much credit for, literally is possibly freedom, because most of our
Yeah.
side gigs are something we're either really good at or we really love, right?
Yeah.
And those have opportunities to provide you so much freedom in life. I hate the word financial freedom because it means so many things for different people. What I love is the word financial independence. And it
Mm,
just gives you the opportunity to live an independent life of what you desire and dream. And
yeah.
that's what we had at that point with those little baby steps, because we had the little to no debt. Our home was our debt and we sold it, and we made great money on it, which allowed us to build debt free in Montana. We didn't have other debt. We had savings accounts. And so we had this push to get us to the point of building. And that's independence in my mind, right? Like I don't
Yeah.
have to count on somebody else. I can do what I want to do. It doesn't mean we're rich. It doesn't mean we're like, you know, everything is wonderful and great. It's been a huge journey, but it gave us the independence to say we can choose this.
Yeah, that's incredible. One of the things that you do with clients is walking them through the 5 foundational pillars. Can you talk to
Mhm.
that a little bit?
I believe that, there's pillars in life, but they always going to roll over into whatever you're doing. So business. So we have your physical, your mental, your spiritual, your relational, and your financial. And they are just that. I always describe it as like, there's your cinder blocks of your basement, right? Or your cinder blocks of the foundation of your home. They have to be strong. And if they're not strong, or if one's a little bit weak, things get wobbly. But when we focus on those 5 foundations and we build them up and we really spend the time we need to, especially as business owners, we tend to dump everything we have, especially in the beginning, into our business. But you can't show up as a business owner, as a leader, if you don't have that foundation built for yourself. And so we talk a lot about like, what are you doing to create physical wellness? And that's not just exercise. That's not just eating well. It's like physical wellness. You feel like maybe you have kids, your kids take off running and you feel like you can go run after them, right? Not out of an emergency, out of fun, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to go for the walk at lunch hour instead of sitting, right? It's a foundation of what is important to you. It's going to be different for all of us. Again, there's no perfect formula. It's like truly what feels good. When do you feel good? If you don't feel good, if you can't get out of a chair, we have a problem, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to sustain the business because honestly, something's going to happen, right? Mental health. Our mental health is critical in business ownership, in life. If we don't have a place to get quiet, if we don't have a place to write, if we don't have a place to grow mentally, then we die. I mean, I know that seems very cut and dry, but it's true. If you're not growing, you're dying. There's really no other way. And so I encourage people to journal, or maybe they need a counselor and they want to, or they already have a counselor. Go do that, right? Like surround yourself in a community of people that are growing and or have already surpassed you, because that creates a mental vision. Spiritual, I think that we all have a different belief in what is and what is not, and it does not matter. But when you don't believe in anything bigger than you, don't have anything to hope for. And hope is critical in life. We need to hope for something bigger. So it doesn't matter if it's universe, God, Buddha, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just as long as you believe and you practice growing that belief on a regular basis.
Mm,
Because just to believe is one thing, but you need to fill that pot. Like,
yeah.
how do I grow this, my spiritual belief? Is it reading the Bible? Is it going on nature walks and seeing the world and what Mother Nature has created? That gives us hope, again, of something bigger, of something more. What I always talk about, like some of the biggest downloads I've ever got in business and life are on nature walks, right?
Mhm.
You get quiet, you're in this vast, amazing creation, and things just come. I don't listen to anything. It's really, truly quiet. And that's a spiritual growth.
Yeah. Mine is
Um,
with water. Like, so
yes,
anytime I'm in the shower, I paddle board. So I go out on the lake or just like hang out by the lake. It's something with the water.
yes, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
And the water is a lot for a lot of people. The rushing of a waterfall brings power, it brings cleansing,
Mhm.
right? Swimming, soaking in salt water, right? Soaking in salt water, it's just like a natural Epsom bath and it can release so much. So there's so many things, and there's not a right or wrong reason. It's just about being curious enough to find it. And that's, I talk a lot about that. You have to have the courage to get curious and the curiosity to be courageous. There's no other way, because curiosity is what fills our growth. And so, relational. If your relationships aren't stellar, and I mean, they're never going to be perfect. That's why I don't use the word, but stellar. Like, where you stand in your relationship with your spouse, if you have a spouse, with your children, with your business partners or your employees. That's that openness, that vulnerability to say, you know what, I'm struggling. Let's talk. That communication, if that's not there, everything's going to start breaking away. Our relationships are critical in life, but definitely in business, because when you show up to the office and you've just had a horrible day with your spouse at home, it rolls over, and vice versa. If you have an employee that you don't feel like you can talk to and be open with, you bring that home. Your
Yeah.
kids feel it, your husband feels it, your wife feels it. And that relational health is just so important. And then financial, right? I mean, we have to have finances to build the business, to live the dream, to live in those values, right? Our values cost money. One of my values is physical health, right? That costs money. Even if I work out at home, it still costs money. I have supplements. I need to have weights, whatever it is. It costs time and it costs money. And
Mhm.
so we have to financially be able to stand in those values, because those core values are our North Star. They're going to direct us wherever we need to go, whatever we dream of. As long as we sit in those core values, we are going the right direction.
Yeah. I think what sometimes people, at least for myself, I guess I can't speak for other people, but for myself, It's a constant, like, you have to keep reminding yourself of your values because
Yes.
sometimes you get led astray by
Mhm.
other people's values or society,
Yes.
right? So it's
Yes.
like, just because you've established your values, it's not like, "Okay, now I'm good." Like, you have to revisit them, like, write them down, put them in your journal, revisit them every couple of days, and maybe reflect on, like, "How did I live out this value today?"
Yeah,
One at a time.
absolutely.
And I do the same thing
Absolutely.
in my business too. It's like decisions in business. It's like you get shiny object syndrome and it's like, "Oh, there's this new thing." Like, but is this one of our values to go this direction? And is this going to support the end goal? Like every decision in life and
Yes,
business should be guided by those values.
absolutely. Absolutely. If you're not doing an audit of your values on a yearly basis, then you're losing the point of them because they do evolve as you evolve. As your business evolves, they're going to change. And that's the beauty of it, right? Is they
Yeah.
get to change, but you still need to know them. I have mine written down like right above my desk. I have them in my phone. And some people are like, well, that seems a little excessive, like that you look at them before you make a purchase. But does it? Because if we're just, our culture is, I want it, get it.
Yeah.
It's just so fast and furious and never having anything to think about. And so if I look at my values when you've got 27 things in your shopping cart, right? It makes it very clear, like, oh, wait a second, there's that trip I want to go on. How is this? Do I need this? No, I don't need this. So then put it away.
Yeah.
Right? For me, that is how I live in it. It's not going to be the same for everybody, but it's also things like you said, I'm at a conference and they're showing all these shiny new things, these new programs, and you're like, "Oh, that sounds wonderful." But if you go back and look at the values and go, "Does it fit my business model?" Because this is your business model. This isn't somebody else's business model. And so they're not going to be the same and it's not going to work the same. This is your family. Your family's model isn't going to be the same as your neighbors.
Yeah.
And so you have to ask yourself in all of those things, does this work in my values and my family's values? And I really highly encourage people to have their children do them. I have adult children. So my kids range from 5 to 31. So there is a big gap. And so the older kids have done the values and their wives have done the values. And I really have coached them and talked to them about this is how you guys come back to those disagreements, right? But I've had my teenagers do them because you think about going to school and you get, maybe it's the peer pressure. You're at a party and let's drink. I want them to think about those values. And that's what that's what I talk to them about is it's like, your values are what's going to direct you. If your values is education and a future and this, you have to ask yourself, does that come into it? And every one of them has family, right? So does this represent your family? Is
Mhm.
this what you want your family to be reminded of? And believe it or not, it happens and it works in a way that they'll come to me and they say, I looked at my values today and I knew that that wasn't the choice I wanted to make. It's really pretty important and it's pretty amazing, honestly, to be able to let them have that freedom. I don't tell them what it is. This is your values. This is what's important to you. So
Mhm.
does it fall into that category? And that helps us in a family value system, right? Because it's not just us as individuals or a business as an individual. Sure, you might be the owner, but if you have employees, the values of everybody are involved in those daily decisions. And it's a really powerful experiment to do with employees,
Mhm.
right? And see if there's any crossover.
Yeah. Yeah. I know for myself, like once I really honed in on my company values and started hiring around that, like the team that I have is just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like the work that people don't realize is the most important part. It seems so fluffy, right? It's like, no,
Yeah.
I just need somebody to do this particular task or job in the company, but it's like doesn't matter how well that person performs that task. If you're not aligned in values, there's going to be a lot of friction at some
Absolutely.
point, you know?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Serena. You said that, you nailed that because there's no other way. And you can see it everywhere you look. The biggest companies in the world, the smallest companies in the world, if people aren't aligned in their ethics, their values, it doesn't work. There's friction, there's tension, there's turnover. The turnover
Mhm.
is huge, right? Because if when you're aligned with somebody in your business, they have a commitment to you. They're loyal to you, right? Because you feel the same, you believe the same. And even if it's not exactly the same, you have this line of connection, and that connection is what creates the loyalty.
Yeah, absolutely. Even when I was in corporate, it was a little more difficult, but I remember doing like once I started managing the accounting department, I started building it out. I don't remember what I must have read something somewhere because at that point I had no leadership coaching. Coaching was like a whole thing I didn't know existed. I would have loved to have a leadership coach in corporate because I worked my way up from the bottom. So it was like
Right.
I got into these roles and I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm the youngest person. How am I going to get people to buy into what needs to be done? And a lot of it came intuitively, which is probably why I was in those positions. But at the same time, one of the things that I tried to do at one point was kind of establish like values of our team.
Hmm.
I couldn't control the whole corporate environment,
Right.
but I could at least establish like a team culture and values within the team. But I wish I had gone deeper than I did. I was very surface level with it. I was like, okay, let's try this. But yeah, if I could do it all over again, I would run that team as if it was my own business and like
Right.
really establish the values, hire from the values. But I kind of did it after the fact of like having already hired people and all that kind of stuff. So it was
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. And I love how you've like, reflected on that, because in these big corporate places, our team is our business. I mean,
Mhm.
if you think about it, like, right, the performance of your team is whether or not you have a job. So
Yeah.
it's your business.
Yeah.
And if we could run more of our teams in that way, I mean, obviously we would love to run huge corporations in this way, but like you said, it that adds a different level of logistics that really takes time and energy and a whole corporation on board. But if you just took your department or your team, whatever that is, and created this systematic value system of how you guys are going to meet those requirements and those marketing or sales or whatever it is, that would be such a beautiful thing, because it's like, again, together, it's not I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, but it's just this team environment that would really create a whole different philosophy in that corporate world.
Yeah. The thing about the corporate environment is like big corporations tend to have like their values and they
Mhm.
like maybe if you're in a company where like for instance one of the companies I was in we did like a team retreat and we did like a ropes course and the team building and all the
Uh-huh.
things that was like very effective while it was going on. And then as
Right.
soon as we got back to the office everyone just reverts back to the regular day-to-day attitudes and it's like
It takes, yeah, it's funny that you say that. I'm actually traveling right now and I'm in Oregon because I'm going to a conference this weekend. And that's the exact philosophy of the leader of this conference is that it's some weird statistic, like 3% of everybody that goes to a conference or a leadership retreat or something like that comes home and actually implements it. They
yeah.
just put it in a drawer, right? Like, I'll get to it later. I got to catch up on my work. And it never gets done. And so she's created this philosophy where she's brought in coaches ahead of time during the event. So you'll sit with a coach, and then after calls. And what a beautiful thing to, right, to be able to have some of that accountability, but not only the accountability, but to bring it into whatever it is that you were there for. Is that your life? Is that your business? Is that your team? And kind of give you ideas and thought processes to think about and just keep it in the forefront of your mind. And she does a lot of corporate coaching. And I think that's new, right? That's not always been that way. But what an amazing thing to bring in these coaches that could do what you just said, right? Like, you
Yeah.
just went to this amazing retreat or this amazing leadership. Now let's implement them into the business, because what's the
Yeah.
point if they just sit in a packet or in a drawer?
Yeah. It really also depends on the upper management or
Yeah.
like the C-level executives. Like they have to also
Buy in.
model. And typically they don't.
Right.
They're
Agreed.
like, okay, all you managers, you go do the thing so that we could have highly effective teams, but we're not going to participate
But
because
we're
we're
not going to support you and participate. Absolutely. It is absolutely a foundational thing. If it's not part of the foundation of that whole business, that whole corporation, it
yeah.
is never going to be completely encompassed in that business.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is like I consider, depending on how large my business grows, typically what ends up happening is the larger the business grows, the more people are involved in hiring. And so some people aren't good at carrying out hiring
Yes.
from the values. So then you get
Yeah.
people in seats that, and then it becomes really difficult to maintain that culture. And it's like, that's like my biggest fear of like growing too big and having that
Yes.
happen.
Right. But it's amazing that you think about it, because I think as we're building businesses, we always say, oh, I just, want to grow it and I want to make this much money, or I want to get it to this many employees, or whatever your growth and your
Mhm.
goal is. But we forget to step back and say, but is it as important as this value? Because if it's not, oh, maybe I don't want to grow that big, or,
Yeah.
maybe I want to stay at this level, because we think of that as giving up or like failing, but it's not, if it's what fuels you to be that best business owner, right? And so,
Yeah.
because it's not all about the bottom line. And I hate
Yeah.
to say that, but it's not. I mean, our wealth is not about money. Wealth is about those five foundations I just talked to you about. It's like we have to be whole as a human. It would have been really easy for my husband to stay in his executive position. It would have been easy. We would have retired there. We made good money. We were able to save everything we wanted to save, live below our means, but he wasn't wealthy,
Yeah.
right? And that, at our point in our lives, we're both on the brink of being 50. Like I said, that was 3 years ago, 47. And at our point in our lives, it's like, but we want something more. It's not just about the bottom line, the money.
Yeah.
And when we're young, we tend to think, oh, it's all about the money. But what if we kind of change that trajectory and let people realize that your life as a whole is just as important, if not more important, than how much you put in the bank?
Yeah. I feel like that is becoming like, I feel like so many people have had that awakening, especially
Yes.
since COVID. It
Yeah.
just like shifted our paradigm.
Yes.
And it's really incredible to watch. But also, I'm like, am I just in an echo chamber because I'm in business?
No, I think it is. I think our younger generations are saying success isn't have to look like a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. It has to look like, what is it that I really feel passionate about right now?
Yeah.
And I'm not making excuses for lazy kids. That's not what I'm doing,
Yeah.
but right. But like there's so many opportunities. And I think we finally get to see some of those opportunities. And COVID gave us opportunities to make money in ways we've never been able to. That is that glass half full. And it really gives us this dynamic of seeing something from different colored glasses, right? They're not all rose colored now.
Yeah.
They're different, or maybe they're coming off completely and saying, you know what? This isn't it. Or people that were in a career, maybe they invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in their education, and they're realizing, I'll use a doctor. I am a doctor. I do want to care for people, but I don't want to do it this way anymore. I don't want to miss 80 hours of my family every week. I don't want to live and breathe people that are already sick. I want to help people not get sick, right? Heard and seen that so much since COVID. And what a beautiful thing, right? You have this person who is so educated and so ability, but he just wants to, or she just wants to change the way we doing things.
Yeah.
And that's that wealth versus money.
One of the things that comes to mind with that doctor example is it's really frustrating for the community that I live in, but I'm in a smaller like mountain community in
Okay.
Arizona. And it's like a place where people come to retire, but a lot of younger families have moved here as well because it's just a slower pace of life.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But because like the community's growing, but like our medical system here has not caught up. And so it's really funny, like if you have to see a specialist or something, like none of the doctors work full time here because they all are here for quality of life as well. So it's like, it's going to be like a month to get in to see them. So you have to literally drive 2 hours to the city to get seen by a specialist if there's some sort of thing going on. And it's like on the one hand, I'm like, go doctors for
Yes.
like living your best life, but also like, what about your community?
Agreed. I'm in exactly the same boat. I can't even tell you, like, we live in a rural Montana community. It's small. The closest hospital is 50 minutes away. And it seems like things just keep getting cut from that hospital,
Yeah.
not because people are moving away, but I really don't think people are working as much as they do. So we have to travel to our biggest city, which, like you said, is 2 hours away for specialists. My newest grandbaby was delivered in the city because what if they didn't have the team on staff? Like she's like, I'm not taking that chance. I'm just going to Missoula.
Yeah.
So it's, one of those pros and cons. I was talking to somebody recently, like, how do you change the way you live when you move there? We were always like within 30 minutes of anything major. Our children's hospital here in Oregon was 45 minutes away. It's that weight. We take the scale
Mhm.
in life, and everything that we do, every chapter is a little bit different in how we look at that scale, but you weigh those pros and cons. What in your life right now is most important to you? And it's like you said, maybe it was the slower way of life. And then you have to work harder for the convenience of things like specialists or stores
Yeah.
or arts,
Yeah.
experiencing the arts, plays, and all that kind of stuff. Or and our kids travel further for their sports teams, but they have these small schools and these small classrooms. It's just that weight. You have to really, again, go back to your values. I mean, we
Mhm.
could say it a million times. And at this chapter in your life, what does those pros and cons look like?
Yeah.
And weighing them and being honest with yourself. And when I say being honest with yourself, are you willing to do the work? Because
Yeah.
when you make any big change in life, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, like moving here and having like that slower pace of life also gave us the time and more financial flexibility to be able
Yeah.
to take that extra time to do more preventative like healthcare, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like I'm on this like physical healing journey, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like doing all sorts of different things to like better my health. And I wouldn't have been able to do that in the city with as much time I was spending working. Now I'm like, I can spend time researching these things and seeking out resources and taking the supplements and doing the exercise and doing these various modality therapies. Like,
And you just beautifully defined true wealth,
yeah.
right? Because that is the key. I mean, millions of people every day are giving up health or joy or time with family for the almighty dollar.
Hmm.
And if that's what they want to do, then that's perfectly fine. But most of them don't.
Yeah.
Most of
It's
them want
just,
more. I'm not going to use the word balance because I don't like the word balance.
yeah.
It's most of them want to start choosing something different and they're not sure how to because it is a choice. Everything is a choice.
Yeah.
And you just defined that perfectly. You had, a bustling, I'm sure, money building career in the city, and you had to choose. Do I want the money, that comfort, right? Because it's a comfort. It's all about comfort for us as humans, as our culture.
Hmm.
Or do I want a better life?
Yeah.
And I always talk about legacy, and we think of the word legacy, and you think about the amount of money you leave in your will, right? This is your legacy. But what if it's about the ability to make hard choices? What if it's about the ability to live bravely, courageously, and live outside of what society says is our norm? This is what you're supposed to do. Graduate from high school, go to college, get a job, work 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 in today's world, and go home and get a couple hours with your kids on the weekends. What if
Yeah.
we just say that's not my joy?
Yeah.
Right? That's the legacy I wanna live. I wanna live when I take my final breath, whenever that is, I want my kids to say, "I am going to be a courageous son of a gun the rest of my life because I'm gonna make mom's memory not live in vain," right,
Yeah.
So, that is more important to me than anything else. If I can give that to my 6 children, my grandchildren, then I have become the most successful person in the world.
Absolutely. Amen. I feel the same too. And like when it comes to legacy, there's so much around that, like leaving a legacy of like emotionally intelligent
Yes.
children.
Yes.
And like for me, I'm like, part of what I want to leave behind in my legacy is like music album of music I've recorded. You
Oh,
know what I mean? Like little
love
things
that.
like that. It seems
Yeah,
little, it's a very big project, but like little things that are, I mean, that lives on forever,
forever.
not like the dollar, right? I could leave money to my kids and hopefully I will too, but
Right.
hopefully they have something like that. I have that from my mom. Like I have cassette tapes with her recordings on
Oh,
there and it's like,
so precious.
yeah, nowadays it's a lot easier to record things and keep them. But like those are very cherished, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And we think about that, and when you say that, because one of the things that I have a dream of is I make 100 lists. So I have 100 lists, and it has to do with travel and community and giving back. And what do I want to create in my lifetime? And one of the things is creating a family foundation, because I want my family to understand the importance of giving back. And that foundation really is based in the foster system. So our youngest four, we did foster care for 13 years, and our youngest four are adopted out of the foster care system. And my passion, I love numbers, I love bookkeeping and helping women entrepreneurs, but my passion, like the thing that just lights my fire, is the foster care system and the need for an overhaul like no other. And there's so many places it can go. But one of the things that hits me the hardest is how the kids age out. When they turn 18, what happens to them? And so I have this passion to like build this foundation. And what a legacy, right? Like no matter if I see the fruition or not, if I begin it, if I walk into it with courage and not worry about where it goes or how it's going to look, I have built that legacy for my family, because they they understand foster care in so many different ways. One, they have the trauma from coming from it. And I don't say that foster and adoption is the most beautiful, traumatic thing that can possibly happen, because somebody is losing their parents.
Yeah.
This is the heartbeat they heard. This is the hands that they felt. And even if they need to be somewhere else because of safety, they're still losing something. And those parents are losing something. And everyone can say, oh, it's their fault. And I'm not going to go into that soapbox. And there's the beauty of somebody else coming in and loving that children and embracing and growing. But it's still traumatic for all people involved. And so they've all felt that too. And I think about that legacy, that long going legacy. We tend to say, well, I want to see it be this thing by the time I die. But it doesn't have to, because the seed is still growing. And when the seed keeps growing, your legacy keeps coming back to that. And so like you say about your tapes and your CDs, and what a beautiful thing to be able to hear your voice. And we have to really stop and ask ourselves, what is the legacy we want to live? What is the legacy we want to leave? What is the legacy of my life? And it's so different. And most people don't even dream about it. I mean, to be really quite frank, did you always dream about this different legacy, Serena? No. We're not taught to, right? We're not taught to dream about this bigger picture. Like I said, I will be 50 next year. I can say that I have only been dreaming the last 5 years. Everything else was just like, oh, well, this is good. Oh, you're doing such a great service. Oh, this. But I never dreamed outside of my capabilities. And until we start dreaming outside of what we can do, this is that spiritual foundation, you guys. If you're dreaming in things that you know you can do, then you're not dreaming big enough. That's not what's meant for you. You have to dream to a level where you're like, not sure how that's possible, right?
Yeah.
Like not knowing how to do that. And then you're talking about legacy.
And then that's also when like courage really comes in.
Oh, so
right?
big.
To just be
So
like,
big.
I don't know how I'm going to make it happen, but I'm going to do it.
Here I go.
Trust the process, trust God, universe, whatever.
Trust every opportunity that steps through your path, whether you can step over it and around it, or you can say, okay, I see you. Here I am. And don't put any meaning with it. It's an opportunity, and it was there for you. It's not there for somebody else. It didn't come in somebody else's path. And so people are like, why do you say yes to all these things? I said, because it's an opportunity. And opportunities is how I'm supposed to get where I'm supposed to get, even though I don't even know where that's at.
Yeah. A lot of times people discount the opportunities that are being placed in front of them, and they feel like they have to seek out the path to get there. But like with your example, opportunities coming in your way, like you might not even realize the connection to that dream that you have until you've said yes and gone through with the opportunity.
And maybe even waited a while.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, now I know why I was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Right?
It boosted, your confidence. It might've been a super scary thing, but it gave you the confidence to do the next thing that you need to do to get closer to that.
Yes.
So
yes, absolutely. I love it. I love how much we can see that same path. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, if someone wants to learn more about what you do, I think you put in your intake form that you have something, and a link? Let me pull
I
it
do.
up.
I do have like a financial webinar that's coming up.
Okay.
It's a free webinar that just really starts to take apart those beliefs
Mhm.
and the steps to kind of moving forward, getting through some of those. That's coming up. So at the end of the month, I gave you the link to put that in the show notes so they can do
Yep.
that. crfinancialfoundations.com. That's my website. And pretty much everything is there. And I'm on social, whether we love it or not, we're on
Yeah.
it.
What's your favorite or your preference on social media where people can connect with you if they want to
I
shoot
think
you?
I didn't think I would ever say this, but I think it's Instagram right now. I really do. So at Corree Roofener Coach, I love that, but I do like LinkedIn. I like the connections I'm making on LinkedIn. I love the true community, conversations that are happening versus, Instagram or Facebook's just more here, here, here. I feel like LinkedIn is really kind of more authentic, and that's who I am. So there's a place for all of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I will link all of those resources in the show notes.
Thank you.
And I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
When I remember to ask guests on my podcast, especially guests who are business owners as well, this one might be interesting from you because you have a bookkeeping background as well. But as a business owner, from the business
Mhm.
owner hat, what is one of the most impactful things that a bookkeeper could do for their clients? Like if you had a bookkeeper, you probably do your own bookkeeping, but
Yeah, I do. Honestly, I think it's connection. I think that especially in the financial world, there is so much shame. Don't want to ask because I don't want to feel stupid. There's so many clients that have come to me and said, my CPA totally just said, "Why don't you just leave it to me?"
Mm-mm.
And I'm like, yeah, no. Okay. So just connection. Like these are humans. They can learn. They're brilliant people. They're business owners. They have done amazing things. Let them learn just enough to ask the questions they need to ask. They don't want to learn your job. That's not what,
Yeah.
otherwise they would have never hired you.
Yeah.
But they teach them how to be empowered by their numbers because they're going to be your favorite client then.
Yeah. I love that. I hope people took notes.
I hope so too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. It was such a pleasure to chat with you, and we'll
You
talk
too, Serena.
soon.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who helps make this podcast possible. Content and interviews are produced by me, Serena Shoup. Our intro and outro music is written and performed by my brother, Ian Gilliam. Editing is also by Ian using his awesome sound engineering skills along with Descript software. Hosting and publishing is by Buzzsprout. And you can check out the show notes for links to all of these amazing resources and resources mentioned in the episode.
Be ambitious.